Welcome to Pro Cycling Manager 2022. My name is Benji, and today I will guide you through all the new features and changes in the new game. Next to that, I'll give my take on every single one of them. That way, you can decide whether the game is worth buying or not. When entering a career mode, we can directly see quite a few visual changes. In Pro Cycling Manager 2021, Wout van Aert had a 81 average stat. Next to that, we had Northern Classics as rider type. In Pro Cycling Manager 2022, the average stat is actually gone. We've now got something called Evaluation, a 6-star system. While this might seem like a very random change, I assure you that this is a pretty good one. I'll get back to it later. Next to that, riders now have multiple rider types, which is honestly quite realistic, you know? For example, Wout van Aert is pretty good at flat, cobbles, and also time trial. The game sees that as his best qualities. As you can see, there's also some visual changes when it comes to how these stats are shown for each rider. Having started a career mode, the first thing I'll do is check out Primoz Roglic because I want to see the new revamped Cyclist page. On the left of the screen, we can see the rider attributes, now split up in 3 categories: primary attributes, physical, and secondary. On the right of that, we've got something called capacities. This is where 2 things come back that we spoke about earlier. First of all, the 6-star rating system for evaluation of the rider, and the multiple rider types. Not only does a rider have a 6-star evaluation for the total of the rider, but also per discipline. For example, Roglic is a 6-star climber, a 2.5-star sprinter, and a 5.5-star puncher. As a consequence, the game sees him as a mountain, hills, and time trial specialist. Now, when you look closely to the star system, you can see that it's not only 2.5 stars for the sprinter, there's half a star in gray. What does that mean? That's the potential of your rider. At the peak of Primoz Roglic's career, he can obtain a 3-star rating in terms of sprinting. Now, Primoz is quite an older rider, 32. Let's take a look at his evolution, and we see that he's getting worse over time. So, his peak was a few years ago, for example. But when we look at a younger rider like Juan Ayuso, 19 years old, a godlike talent at UAE, he's currently only a 4.5-star climber, but has the potential of a 6-star climber. He will likely achieve that in his career. The evaluation and potential of a rider did not necessarily change behind the scenes, but they are visualized much better. They're now visualized both on the same scale, a 6-star system. Because of this, you as a player know much better how much your rider can grow in certain areas. And when it comes to scouting young riders, you can much better see what they can achieve in their career. This feature has the Benji seal of approval. I love this. Next to that, there's some more new info on this page, but those were the most important parts. On to the flagship feature of Pro Cycling Manager 2022, the new scouting feature. On the right, we can see that our team has 3 scouts. Koen Keulemans, a legendary scout. Looks like Koen has 10 green blocks right here to use on countries. In comparison, Oscar Campos, an international scout, only has 8 of those green blocks to use. Let's try and put Koen Keulemans on the job to scout Belgians. We click on Eurasia. After that, we can click on Belgium, but it looks like it combines that together with Luxembourg. And then on the right side, it looks like we can select the country itself, Belgium. Looks like next to the selection box of the Benelux region, we have 2 icons that say we have 7 bonus points in general for, first of all, having Belgian riders, and next of all, having good Belgian riders. I won't lie, I don't know where these 7 bonus points are applied to. Anyway, to scout this region, it will take 3 green blocks away from Koen Keulemans. So, for example, if we select him at the bottom, we can see that he now has 3 of his green blocks in use. Looks like we currently have 8 knowledge of the territory. This was initially 3 when we didn't have Belux under Koen Keulemans, as you can see. But because Koen Keulemans has a 5 knowledge on the region, we can select him and make that 8. Looks like every country that you can scout has 2 attributes. First of all, training structures, which seems to define the quality of the riders that you can get from that country, and popularity of cycling, which influences the amount of talent that flows out of that country. The great part about this is that it evolves during the career mode. So, for example, if for Eritrea, Binyam Girmay starts winning monuments, then this will improve during the career, which means that the riders coming out of the Eritrean scouting will become better, and also more riders will come out of that, making that country better just because of the performances of Binyam Girmay, which is great and kind of realistic. This is an example of an email I got that Richard Carapaz won Tirreno Adriatico, and as a consequence the popularity of cycling in Ecuador improved, and therefore the scouting of juniors improved in the future. After testing it out for a bit, you're actually not scouting the country itself, but the Grand Territory above it. So for example, We are scouting Belux and not Belgium with Koen Keulemans. Not that it honestly really matters for me personally. There we go, I filled up every single one of my scouts with regions, and it looks like you can actually scout a lot. So I can actually scout the entirety of Europe with my scouting team here. That is probably a tiny bit too much and somewhat overpowered. On January 9th, we get an email to confirm all the scouting missions we have selected. There we go. I've decided to move a bit further in the career mode to February 1st to take a look what the scouting has done. By the way, the simulation times of the days in PCM 2022 and the races double as fast. But anyway, back to business. Looks like our scouts have done some work because we've got a long list of riders already scouted. On the right side of the rider, we can see something called detection level, and this decides how much you know about a certain rider. For example, this rider right here, Tommaso Arrigoni, this guy is detection level 3, so we already know quite a bit. For example, some stats, his qualities, and the evaluation of the rider. I'm pretty sure that number goes up to 10, and then you basically know everything about the rider. My guess is that from scouting the region continuously in the future, we will know more from each rider, but I think we can also observe a rider. Yes, exactly. And that way learn more about them specifically. Let's give that a try with Arrigoni. It indeed does look like we have increased the detection on this rider now to 5 by doing that, and we now know his potential to be pretty high, I think. As you can tell, I'm still figuring this out, okay? Let's try that again. Actually, it looks like it will now take 14 days instead of 1 week to do this. We are now 14 days later. He's now got detection level 7. We know all the stats of the rider now. Looks like another quality was added in the meanwhile. His potential looks like it's a different shade of blue to me personally, so I don't know what the difference is between that and what we saw earlier, but I think he also increased when it comes to his evaluation. I decided to move forward to August for the start of the transfer market, simply because I wanted to see whether I can actually sign one of these riders in my World Tour team. Let's give it a try with Arrigoni, for example. Let's right-click, contact, and it looks like we can. Turns out we don't have to spend a single transfer point to get into contact with this man, and I think I can sign him right here, right now. Oh, he wants some more money. The youngster already wants some money. That's crazy. 3K? Okay, he does it. And here we have the email. Arrigoni is ready to sign. Confirm. There we go. He's now signed for our World Tour team. On the staff page, when signing a new scout, you can now see the details of the territories that they're good at when it comes to scouting, making the process of signing the right staff a bit more intriguing. As most of you know, Jumbo-Visma also has a development team. There are some changes in relation to that. On October 24th, you get an email to do the U23 draft, which is a new system to sign riders for your U23 development team. Let's take a look. Let's click on draft. In turn 1 of the draft of your development team, you can select the riders from your current U23 team that you want to keep. For example, I want to keep Per Strand Hagenes, Lars Boven, and a number of other riders. There we go, I selected them all. We've now got 7 out of 20 riders maximum. Why can we not sign Johannes Tonemitted? Because he signed for UnoX Pro Cycling team, so I decided to step up from the U23 level to a pro team. Let's confirm and go to the next turn of the draft. In turn 2, we get a list of the riders that we scouted. From these, we can select 3 riders that we want to offer a contract for our U23 team. Let's do so with the ones with the most potential, shall we? Abad Santiago, Mike Helison, and Tobias Šestak. Let's confirm that. Looks like of those 3 riders, only 2 of them decided to sign with me, Mike and Tobias, not the Spaniard. We can also see all the other riders that went to other teams. Looks like Abad Santiago decided to go to Bahrain Cycling Academy, so it seems to heavily depend on the region that the development team is from. Turn 3 then. Once again, we get to select 3 riders, and I think this goes on forever until we got our 20 riders. There we go, the last turn, turn 6, let's confirm, and now this should be done. Yes, 20 out of 20 riders, nothing else to do. We've completed our draft. I went further 2 days into the career mode, into the off season, and we've now got the full development team that we drafted. Now, where did the 20 come from? The amount of riders that we could sign? Well, that's simply the amount of riders that we set up initially when creating the development team. 20 squad. Anyway, I think that's about it when it comes to the scouting and U23 development system. There are still some other changes in career mode though. For example, the following. In Pro Cycling Manager 2021, you could not change the trainer on the trainers tab of the squad. For every single rider, you had to go towards the rider's Cyclist page, you had to go to the training tab and adapt the trainer there rider by rider. On Pro Cycling Manager 2022, you can change that directly from the trainers page. So That's a huge thing for me. For example, I can give Lendite the task to train Janssen van Rensburg, because their styles are both traditional. Of course, if you like the old way, you can still go to the rider page, still go to the training tab and adapt it here still. Another small change when it comes to training is that you can now on the trainer page see the riders that a certain trainer is training. For example with Luke, but also with Marcus right here. Another pretty big change is the rider objectives overview page. On Pro Cycling Manager 2021, this was basically just an overview page. You could only see which objectives were assigned to your riders and not adapt anything here. On Pro Cycling Manager 2022, this page is completely revamped, not only giving you an overview, but also some power tools to make your season planning a lot more easy and faster. The most simple things we can do is remove certain riders on the left side from certain races. There we go, Roger Kluge is out of the Santos Tour Down Under. Or we could do it on the right side by removing races from riders like GP de Pologne from Rudiger Selig. But this page can do way more than that. On the left side I can select, for example, the Santos Tour Down Under and the Vuelta Ciclista Mallorca and say, I don't really like our planning there, let's delete every single objective that is set in those races. Basically, we took those races away from every single rider when it comes to their rider objectives. The next thing you can do is select multiple races on the left and, for example, multiple riders on the right, Wellens and Campenaerts. And you have this button right here. Add the selected races as objectives for the riders selected in the table on the right. There we go. And this will add those two races as the rider objectives for Campenaerts and Wellens. You've also got the ability of deleting all the rider objectives of multiple riders. For example, I've selected Van Moer, Van Gils and Gilbert. Let's click this delete button and all their objectives are gone. Another aspect of this page is that you can copy paste rider objectives from one rider to another. For example, Philippe Gilbert is kind of empty now. Let us select him and go to the top here on this button. I think Schwarzman has a pretty good schedule for him, so let's select that, and there we go. It has copied over Schwarzman's schedule towards Philippe Gilbert. All these features combined are such a major change for me because I spent hours on the season planner in Pro Cycling Manager 2021. I specifically asked for this feature and the developers made it, so I'm really happy about this. There's a small new customizability option in the settings. You can disable the variability of the race day condition. When you do so, the race day condition that you see in the briefing screen before the race will be the same as the race day condition in the race. Next to that, you can also adapt the amplitude of the RDC. What does this mean? The amplitude is the minimum and the maximum limits of your race day conditions. Now, because in the settings I have the variability of race day condition enabled, this means that in the race we can have a race day condition that is different from the 0 that we currently see as the expected race day condition. But again, because in the settings we have the RDC set to 1 amplitude, this means that on paper we can only have a +1 or a -1 in the race. We're now in the race. Every single one of my rider except one of them has a 0 day. Vandenberg has a +1 day, so these settings work perfectly. Next to the things we've spoken about so far, there's also some changes when it comes to the rider attributes in general. For example, the hill stat is now more important in the Tour of Flanders. I haven't tested this out, I will in a separate video in the coming days. Next to that, the resistance and stamina stats of riders now have a completely different meaning in the race. I've dropped Filippo Ganna behind the peloton to test this out. Firstly, stamina is related to the yellow bar, resistance is related to the red bar, but it's not that simple. For example, these stats do not actually influence how fast those bars deplete, nor how fast they fill up. When your green bar comes to the point where there's about 2/3 left, that's when resistance and stamina start kicking in. That is when the maximum length of your yellow and red bar starts deteriorating the more efforts you put in. As you can see with Filippo Ganna here, I can refill my yellow and red bar, but it will never become fully complete again. Now, what did the resistance and stamina stat do then? Well, stamina decides how fast that yellow bar's maximum deteriorates. After your green bar reaches the point where it starts deteriorating your yellow bar. Resistance is exactly the same thing, but for the red bar. I know, it does not sound simple, it's not simple to explain, but that's how it works. Do I think it's a good idea that it works like that? I actually don't know yet. I actually feel like it's not a bad idea, because this makes it that those stats only really start mattering once you have a race where multiple efforts after each other happen. So for example, a Jebel Hafid stage in the UAE Tour is a one-time effort, and therefore your green bar will likely not even reach the point to where your yellow and red bar starts deteriorating its maximum. So that's more of a watt per kilo test, more of a pure mountain test without the necessary resistance and stamina influence. But a harder race with multiple mountains or multiple cobble sections or a longer race in general that is pretty hard, that is when your yellow and red bar starts deteriorating because your green bar will be too low. And that's when energy management becomes important. Does that make any sense? If it doesn't, it doesn't. If it does, it does. But that's how it is. Next to those changes related to the stats, there's also AI changes. One of them is supposedly that towards the end of Roubaix, I always had the situation where they all attacked and I had to do all the chasing myself. Now the cooperation in groups is apparently much better. Just like with the Tour of Flanders, I'll be testing that out in a separate video. A hidden feature in the game is that they've introduced the 3-kilometer rule. If you crash in the final 3 kilometers, you will get the time of the group that you crashed away from. Nonetheless, I haven't had that scenario happen to me, so I can't tell you if it actually works. In Pro Cyclist mode, there's also a pretty important change. If you are in the race as leader, you can now control teammates in other groups. So for example, if you crash from the peloton, you will be able to call back teammates from that peloton to help you out. Which is great because I complained about that every single time that happened. Anyway, that's about it when it comes to the general changes when it comes to Pro Cycling Manager 2022. It's always possible that I missed a few things left and right, but those were the most important ones. Personally, I'm quite happy with the changes that happened, honestly. They are changes that I've wanted for years, that make my experience of doing career mode and so forth more enjoyable. No, they are not the biggest changes, that's for certain. But personally, I'd rather have these changes than, for example, a graphical update. I don't care about graphics in this game. I just want a better management experience, and I think that this edition gave me that. So for me, this is a worthy to buy edition, but I don't decide for you. If you like these changes, check the game out. If you didn't, well, don't check the game out. It's as simple as that. As always, thank you very much for watching this video, and I guess I'll see you very soon for the next one. Goodbye.